One of the first things a new manager has to do in Football Manager is deciding what tactic and style of play they're going to use, at least in those opening few matches. So in this video, I'm going to take you through the process I go through when arriving at a new club for the first time and deciding how we're going to play in that first match. And this process starts as you're setting up a new game. As you can see, I've started a new save with Wimbledon and we are looking for this screen because this screen should not be ignored. The best 11, it's usually not a million miles off from where you want to play. The tactic will vary according to the preferences of the staff who are already at the club and also the players that you've got. So in this Wimbledon save, the suggestion is 4-4-2. We're not necessarily committing to a 4-4-2 here and now, but what we are doing is making a mental note, 4-4-2, certainly as a starting point, and we'll use that as we get in to the rest of the save. Likewise, on your club vision, we still haven't got into the game properly yet, but on your club vision screen, it again starts to give you some pointers that you might want to work towards that are going to work well for your style of club. So again, we already know about 4-4-2. Now we're being told that they'd prefer we play direct football. They'd prefer we play attacking football. They'd prefer we make the most of set pieces. So again, slot them away at the back of the mind. You're probably going to want to use them, or at least base what you come up with on that information. And then we are finally into the save, and my first port of call is always the squad screen with the LOLLUJO view on. If you haven't got the LOLLUJO view yet, you can download it from the Steam Workshop, or there's a video on the channel that explains how to set it up and has the links to download directly as well. Only available on PC, I'm afraid, although you can set this up yourself in the console version, in the touch versions. You just have to do it all manually by inserting columns and moving things around. But from this screen, we just very simply want to sort according to ability. Now, you do have to take these star ratings with a pinch of salt. They do take into account the quality of your staff, the form that your players are currently in. They'll change. They're not absolute values. It's not like this is definitely a 4 out of 5 player. You must treat them as such, but it does give you an idea of who your better players are. And you want to build your system, build your tactic to make sure that all of your better players are on the pitch at the same time, and then also get the most out of them. Weirdly, we have our best player is on loan at Dundee. So, I guess that's a loan with a view to a permanent move, and there's not a lot we're going to be able to do about that. In fact, he's been on loan at Dundee for 3 years, but is apparently... That's a weird situation. You don't normally see that, but let's ignore him. So if we filter out players who are not at the club, so we want to... There you go. Filter out the players who are not at the club, just so we don't have to see him. We don't have to know about him. We don't have to think about him. And we are then left with the players that are actually here for us to build our system around. So our best player is a central midfielder. His natural position is central midfield. He's accomplished as an attacking midfielder and a left midfielder. Can't do left wing though, and he's competent at being a defensive midfielder. But really, to get the best out of this guy, he wants to be playing central midfield as a ball-winning midfielder, as a box-to-box midfielder. So we know straight away this is our best player. We want to play him in his best role. We probably want a system that includes an actual central midfielder. A lot of the stuff like the 4-2-3-1s now, for example, are 2 DMs and attacking midfielder. So we're already ruling them out. We're not going to do a 4-2-3-1 here unless we move it so that it has central midfielders rather than DMs or an AM. So we're going with a central midfielder system. Our next best player, a centre forward. He is an out-and-out striker, can play as a pressing forward or a poacher, can also do a job on the wings, but we're not interested in him doing a job. He's our best striker. He's going to play as a striker. We've then got a goalkeeper who can either be a sweeper keeper or a goalkeeper. So we've got a little bit of a flexibility with him. And then we've got another centre mid who can actually play as a defensive midfielder naturally as well, but is still very comfortable playing as a central midfielder. And then 2 more strikers. So we've got him who is just an out-and-out striker, can't do anything else, and him as an out-and-out striker who can sort of do some other bits. So just based on that, I'm already leaning towards that 4-4-2 that the game is telling me we should be doing. We haven't got any flying wingers. I mean, if we come down here a little bit further, we've got a couple of guys who can play on the wings, but this guy can also play wide on the wide midfield positions on either side as well. So we don't have to play with attacking midfield wingers. We can play with a flat midfield. And then this guy, less comfortable doing it. He'd probably rather be a little bit further forward. It's something to bear in mind, but he is also, what, the 12th best player at the club. I'm not going to build my entire tactic around him and then maybe around this guy who wants to be an attacking midfielder, although to be fair, can play central midfield as well. So I am thinking certainly a flat midfield 4, 2 strikers, and then the defence is made easy as well because the fullbacks that we've got are natural fullbacks, although this guy can play as a wing back and a centre back. He can do it all. What a useful player he would be. He's an out and out left back, although could play wing back as well. So actually, we've got the flexibility on both sides to play with wing backs if we want to, but we don't really have loads of centre backs. We've got, if those two are both playing as fullback, our best centre back is this guy who's out for the first half of the season with damaged cruciate ligaments. So we go even further. He then becomes our best centre back, and then we have to come to here to find another one. And then we've only got one more, so we don't really want to play all 3 of them at the same time. So we've ended up on the 4-4-2. We then come to the tactic creation screen, and from here, I pay a lot of attention to these thumbs ups. And now we know the shape we want to use. Certainly initially when I join a club, I'm going to pick the 3 systems that my assistant manager is recommending, and then just pick the formation in each of those. So we've got a gegenpress, we've got a thumbs up there. The thumbs up means your squad is suited to playing that style of play. There you go. If you hover over it, it says Terry Skiverton, the assistant manager, believes this style to be well suited to the players in the squad. So we'll do it with wing play as well. We'll have a 4-4-2, and then for the third one that we're training, we are going to do this fluid counter-attacking systems. We've got 3 different hold on. Let's actually put the 4-4-2 on. We've got 3 different variations of the 4-4-2 loaded up there. Now, based on my many, many years of playing Football Manager, I'm already leaning towards the wing play out of the 3 of these, mainly because gegenpress, it's not typically used as part of a 4-4-2. In fact, we saw it. If we clear that off, we saw it when we were setting it up. If you click on the gegenpress and then click choose a formation, 4-4-2 isn't even one of the best formations that works with this. Now, we do have the 4-2-4 on here, which would allow both wingers to push forward a little bit, but naturally does drop the central midfielders back, which doesn't really suit our central midfielders. So, I mean, I might leave that one on for the gegenpress, just so we've got an alternate system. And then for the fluid counter-attack, again, I don't think the 4-4-2 was listed as one of the systems that really does suit the fluid counter-attack. Yeah, see, these are all systems with defensive midfielders. We're not interested in doing any of those. We will keep the 4-4-2 on, but at the back of my mind, I'm thinking we're probably not going to use it. This might be a system that we switch to if we're trying to defend a lead towards the end of a match. So I think we've kind of ended up with 3 different variations. We've got the 4-4-2 wing play on a balanced mentality that we can start our matches with. If we're chasing a lead, we can switch to a gegenpress, push our wingers forward, play with higher tempo, play with a more positive mentality. And if we're trying to kill a game off, we can switch to the counter-attacking system on a cautious mentality. We've got the makings of a style of play in mind now. From here, the next thing that I will do, because we're not done, we're not just going to go with the presets that are on the game. From here, I'm going to go to Quick Pick and click this little drop down tab. And this is a screen that not everybody knows exists, I don't think. If you go to pick without restrictions and then pick best 11, it will actually put the best player for each position into the team, regardless of things like fitness. Obviously, we've got these 2 guys that are injured, but these are the best players to fit into these roles in this system, because I'm now going to tweak the system to suit our best players. So we go through one by one. What are they good at? So this guy can be a pressing forward, a poacher, or an advanced forward. So again, we don't necessarily commit to one straight away because he's part of a strike partnership. We want to see what the other guy can do. The other guy likes to be a pressing forward, poacher, target man, advanced forward. he can pretty much do it all as well. So we're now looking for a combination between the two of them that will work. When I'm playing a two-striker system, I always like to have one on attacking, one on support. So if we go back in and look at Robinson again, because I think he's probably going to be the guy who acts as the support striker, because if we go back here, our best striker is Ali Al-Hamadi. So he's the guy I want playing as the most attacking player. He's our best striker. Let's make him the furthest forward player on the pitch. So if Robinson's going to be our support striker, we've got a few different roles that he's capable of doing. Again, just using these star ratings, these role suitability things as a starting point. We're probably not going to play him as the deep lying forward because he's not quite as good as that as these other four roles. And certainly complete forward, trequartista, false nine, he can't do any of those. He's very much a League Two striker. So then we look at these, we want him on a support mentality. So that straight away rules out poacher and advanced forward because you can only use an attacking mentality on those two, but you can do a support striker on pressing forward or as target man. And when we switch that to be support on both of those, we see pressing forward stays as 4 stars, target forward goes down to 3.5 stars. If you want to dig into the attributes themselves and really make a decision about what he's best at, fill your boots. I mean, the obvious reason why he might not be the best target forward in the world is he's only got 7 for heading, whereas if we have him as that pressing forward on support, there's not much he can't do. So he's going to be a pressing forward on support. And then this guy, we want to play as the more attacking of the strikers. He's equally adept at being a pressing forward, a poacher, or an advanced forward. We don't really want 2 pressing forwards, so we're ruling that one out. And then we've just got the choice. Do we play him as a poacher? Do we play him as an advanced forward? And you can, I mean, get an idea looking at the attributes. It highlights the key attributes for the roles. Looking at these, I think he's probably got more stuff he's better at as an advanced forward. So we'll start him as an advanced forward. These are all very much subject to change though. This is stuff we're creating a tactic for game 1 here, and you have to be then willing to tweak it and be flexible with it. An example of a recent save with striker instructions, I was managing Chelsea on Twitch in my beta save. We signed Victor Osimhen. We played him as an advanced forward and he was offside constantly. We switched him to be a poacher and he stopped being offside so much. And if you look at the actual descriptions of the roles, you can start to understand why that might happen, because an advanced forward is looking to get in behind. He's trying to play off the shoulder of that last man, whereas a poacher is more about being in and around the 6-yard box, not necessarily trying to break the offside trap constantly. So as you get used to the roles, you'll be able to tweak the roles according to what you think your players can and can't do. But that's our front two. That's got them sorted. If we drop back into the midfield, this is the guy who doesn't really want to play deeper. So you've got 2 options here. You can either train him to do it, which is probably what I would do, or you could play a slightly asymmetrical system and just push him forward. If you push him forward like that and maybe play a more defence-minded wing back behind him to kind of cover the gap that he's leaving behind, that would probably work. But in this situation, we know that we've got Jack Curry, who's naturally a complete wing back or a wing back on attack. This guy, to get the best out of him, wants to be bombing forward, overlapping. So actually, we want to play him there on a support instruction. We then want Curry, who can do either of these roles. We're probably going to leave him as a wing back on attack rather than a complete wing back. Complete wing back, I think, is a little bit fancy for League Two, but you can try it, see how it works out. But we'll leave Tilly as a winger on support. We want to make sure that he's learning to do that role, so get him training to play as a winger on support as part of a midfield, just so that he gets better. But playing him in that role, he will get better at it anyway. You won't necessarily get the best out of him until he becomes accomplished or natural in the role, because the game does penalise you a little bit for playing out of position. But he should be fine for now. Certainly in the lower leagues, you sometimes have to put square pegs into round holes. So that's the left-hand side of the pitch sorted. And then I like to kind of flip it round and reverse it on the right-hand side. And this would be the same if it's a 4-4-2, 4-2-4, 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, whatever you're going to end up doing. If I've got one wing back on attack, I usually want the other one on support. If I've got one winger on support, I usually want the other one on attack. So we're probably going to leave them this way round, but we'll just check in on them just to check that they can cope with it. So if we're playing him as a winger on attack out of midfield, he's fine doing that. And this guy is slightly more defensively minded than the guy on the left anyway. His natural is to be a wing back on defence or a complete wing back on support. So he's naturally a little bit more defensive minded. So that's our wide areas sorted. We now come into central midfield. Most tactics, you're probably going to want a playmaker in your midfield somewhere. Actually, with a wing play, you tend not to need one, and you're kind of led towards those kind of conclusions by the game anyway, because when you set up the tactic, it has its recommended positional roles, and you can see there is no playmaker in this formation initially, so don't feel that you have to force one in. Obviously, if one of these guys is natural as a playmaker, then by all means play him as one, but I've got a feeling these are probably going to stay in these roles. So he is a ball-winning midfielder or box-to-box midfielder. There is two best roles, and I think it's the same for this guy. Yeah, ball-winning midfielder or box-to-box midfielder. You could play him as a playmaker if you decide you're not creating enough chances and you want to try it out. He is just as good. He's 3.5 stars, just as good at being a deep line playmaker on defend as he is at being a ball-winning midfielder on defend. But I think for the tactic we're playing, which is all about getting the ball out wide to these four guys who are out wide, they're trying to get into crossing positions and then get the ball in to our two centre forwards. I actually think these guys, we're looking more for hard-working, running around a lot, getting tackles in, protecting the back four, maybe getting up and joining in with the attack to get on the end of crosses. But we're not really looking for anyone in here to be spraying the ball around all over the place. It doesn't really work with this tactic. So I think we leave them as a box-to-box midfielder and a ball-winning midfielder, and then we'll just check in on our centre-backs. And usually I'll just go with whatever their best role is at centre-back. I'd be happy here with him as a central defender or a no-nonsense centre-back. And then on this side, again, we'd be happy with either of those roles. We'll leave them on central defender because that's what they run naturally. And then once again, we check in on here to see what we want from our 6'4" goalkeeper. And he was equally comfortable being a sweeper keeper or a goalkeeper. So in that instance, I'm just going to leave it to the one that's in the preset tactic, leave him as a goalkeeper. So we've now got our formation, we've got our positional instructions in, we've got the shape that we want to play. We then replicate those positional instructions across the other two tactics as well. Maybe on this one we will switch to playing a playmaker as part of actually, we can't have the box-to-box midfielder there. So maybe what we'll do is we'll have him as a ball-winning midfielder and him as a playmaker, or you could do it the other way around. You could have the playmaker on support, the ball-winning midfielder on defend, whichever way you prefer. We're just going to set the wide players up to be the same as they were on the other one. So we want him as a wing back on attack. He's going to do that on support. Then he is going to be a winger on attack, and he's going to be on support. We don't want him as a ball-winning defender. A ball-playing defender, because we know it doesn't work for him. Likewise, we don't want a sweeper keeper on attack. We'll perhaps switch to that sweeper keeper on defend on this one. So it's slightly different from what we had in the wing play variant. And then lastly, switching back over to this one, we know that we want him as the pressing forward, not a deep lying forward. We want him overlapping still. I mean, you could potentially, because this is a more cautious one, you could maybe make that support and maybe have him doing defend. So you're just dropping your wing backs back a little. There's certainly an argument for that. And then we want these midfield roles to be the same ones that we already know from before. So we've now got 3 different variants of the same tactic. Now you've got your tactics in, you can go into your squad planner and you can have a look at your squad depth. And this is where you start thinking in terms of where you might need to do transfers, where your weaknesses in the squad might be. You'll also want to do things like set up your set piece instructions, maybe even tweak with some of the individual player instructions. But at this stage, I probably wouldn't. And things like recruitment and set pieces are kind of outside the scope of this video. If you want to see that kind of stuff, let me know down in the comments and we can do them as separate videos. But really, this is what I'm happy with going into our first game of the season. We'll make sure that this is the system that's being trained. If we find ourselves going behind in that match, we'll switch to this. If we find ourselves trying to defend a lead, we'll switch to this. And we'll just watch. We'll keep an eye on how the game is going, what's working. If you notice that there's a player who's consistently playing really poorly, maybe look at switching up his role, maybe look at changing his position. Like if Tilly is awful here, then maybe we do need to play him a little bit further forward. For example, if Robinson's not really getting into the game as a pressing forward, maybe try him as a target forward. If Al Hamadi's offside all the time, maybe try him as a poacher. Maybe if he becomes a target forward, you can try him as the pressing forward. And you kind of experiment with it, watch what's happening, keep an eye on the ratings, the goal returns, the XG, the general performances, what you're actually seeing in the match engine, and tweak it as you go. But there you have a starting point for AFC Wimbledon. It's taken us, what, 15 minutes to go from never having heard of any of these players to having a pretty clear idea of how we're going to play, what kind of shape we're going to play in, and also where we need to strengthen, because we can see that we've got some injuries in that back four and probably need to bring in some defenders if we were going to carry on with this save. And I hope you found that helpful. If you have, please make sure you leave a nice big thumbs up on the video to let me know you want to see more of this kind of thing. This was actually a video that lots of you requested, so if there's another tutorial guide video that you want to see, request it down in the comments below, and if enough people ask for it, then I'm probably going to do it, because I'm all about making the videos that you want to see. I like views, you see. If you are new, subscribe to the channel, turn your notifications on. We've got daily Football Manager content coming out constantly, both here on my second channel, on Twitch. We are doing all of the content at the moment, so make sure you subscribe to don't miss out on any of that. And thank you very much for watching.